Hello, welcome back to the Reading Mama. Today I thought I'd do a quick wrap up of what I read in August. August was a heavy library month because I'm still trying to unpack everything. I only have physical copies of two of these books, and one of them I actually just purchased. I had to get it from the library. So, what did I actually read? I read 12 books this past month, and it's about 50-50 on what I actually had projected in my TBR what I was going to read. I was really focusing on that summer bingo from Beautiful Minutia, and yeah, so that factored in heavily. So let's go through and just share what I've got, and I'll tell you where it fits on my TBR. So first up, I read, or listened to rather, The Codebreaker by Isaac, what is his name? I just wrote Isaac, by Isaac Walter Isaacson, something like that. And it's about Jennifer Doudna, who helped develop CRISPR and all of that genetic progressiveness that we've had in the last decade, 2 decades. And it was really very science heavy and really had me kind of trying to recall all my biology information. And I just really appreciated her biography, though. I mean, there is a little bit of a slant on it there where she's very much can do no wrong kind of mentality, but otherwise I did really love it. My oldest is reading the young readers version of it. No matter where you land on the COVID vaccine thing, it does talk about that. And I mean, you can't just ignore like it doesn't exist if you are anti, and if you're pro, then you want to know. I don't know. I like to know what's going on behind all of it. So I thought that was very interesting. Then I had a fantasy, sci-fi, I don't know what you want, dystopian. I finished the book that held her heart, and that is by Mark Lawrence. It was the end of the, I think it's called the Library Trilogy. It is so wackadoodle, and I loved it, and then I didn't. There's a few swear words, so keep that in mind, especially if you're doing the audiobook, which I didn't realize the first time through the first book. But the book that held her heart finishes the story of, there's so many characters. I think that's what I didn't like about this particular one, because by the end of this series, we have so many different points of view that we're following that it was a little just annoying. But you have these 2 different species who basically have been warring, or 3 species that have been warring across time. And sometimes one is the bad guy and one is perceived the bad guy. And other times the other is doing it. And it's just talking about how the atrocities and the things repeat over and over and over. And basically the library is their means of transporting through space and time. And it's through just different, you get, even with this one, you got different, what do you call it? It's, you know, in all the Marvel things where you have alternate reality, all these different things going on. So there's just a lot going on. And you have these 2 who are in love, who are trying to get back together. They're different species, but they love each other. And they're trying to reunite and keep the world from collapsing. I mean, normal YA dystopian kind of stuff, right? And it does get pretty heavy. This one brought in some of the atrocities of the Holocaust and things that happened there, and really kind of brought it to a head in that concept of, you know, I don't know how to explain the concept of, you know, really getting along with others and how we view others, and who is other, and that whole concept. And there were a lot of different nuances. I really just was disappointed with the end of the book. I was disappointed with the ending. I was disappointed with, like I said, the multiple viewpoints. It was just a lot. There was a lot more, we'll call it liberal things that I don't agree with in there as a conservative Christian, and just other things. But it was still, I still finished it. I still enjoyed it overall, but it was kind of a letdown compared to the other 2. And I'm counting that as my Read Your Bookshelf challenge. It was a library book that I've been desperately waiting for. And so it wasn't on my bookshelf, but it was on my TBR list from the library. And so I got that, and that was a chunky book. Next, I read another sequel, and this is another YA dystopian. You'll see a theme here. And it's Crierstone by Lindsay Llewellyn. And I had read Chaos Grid a while back. I am thinking I'm not gonna like this, but Chantel reads all day just kept saying how good it was and how wonderful it was. And so I was like, okay, if Chantel likes it that much, we have a lot of similar reading styles. I'm gonna give it a try. Got it from the library, read it in ebook form, and loved it. Absolutely loved it. So I had to read the sequel, which is Stone, and I really enjoyed that too. And you're following a young girl who has a way to combat this drug that is overtaking the thing, and so it's her trying to figure out where to put her place and what is her role and what is her responsibility. And it mirrors the Jonah story of the Bible, in that she doesn't want to go, but she knows she has to go. And so it is Christian, but it is Christian light. And so just, it was very interesting to follow that. You do have a romance story, very clean, nothing, they do love each other, but that's not the priority of the story. I didn't feel. It was just very interesting. It's like Texas in the distant future where the climate has changed drastically, and so has society. And yeah, there's a lot going on in that one. But I really enjoyed it. Lindsay Llewellyn is somebody I look forward to reading again. Then I listened to Flow by Claire Littlemore, which is another YA dystopian. And that's really only because my Libby audiobook came in and I didn't have any others at the moment. So why not? I don't know if I'm going to continue that one. It was odd. Basically, these people, he's different. I don't know. There's a society, and they are very cut off from the rest of the world to the point where they didn't know there is a rest of the world. They're surrounded by water, kind of gives island vibes. It's very British. Maybe that's just the audio reader. I don't know. And they're divided into these different components that help make the society go. And the main character is chosen to move out of the agriculture section that she had been in for the last several years into a security position. And that, very divergent kind of vibes. And so now she's learning kind of the nitty-gritty of things that happen that she didn't realize were happening. They get better food portions, they get better other things. There's other things going on that they don't know of. And then there's some evil happening that their group is part of and they don't want to be. And so it ends with them, spoiler, it ends with them wanting to find out more and move forward. So I don't know. Like I said, I may or may not continue the series. Then I listened to Gifted Hands by Ben Carson, which is on my 40 by 40 list. And it was good. It was very succinct, very short. And I really did enjoy it. I've watched the movie also. It's very good. It's not like amazing writing. It's a good story. And he tells it very succinctly. And I appreciated that. Then I continued the YA fantasy, we'll call it, series by Sabatier, and it was Reaper at the Gates, and you're following Elias and Helene, and who else? I don't know. Leia. And you've got those 3 points of view, and they're basically they're doing different things, but all trying to save the world is really the end, right? But from different points. One from inside the system, one from way outside the system, one from a whole nother realm. And so you have a lot going on, and definitely an interesting read. I'm loving this series. It's not, I don't feel like it is romance heavy, which is always great because a lot of YA books, that's all they are these days. And so it is not romance heavy. It is there. And you have just this, I like the characters because while they all have flaws and they all recognize them and they are moving towards helping others, and they all are very other focused, not self-focused, which I appreciate in a main character. So I'm excited to finish that series in September. And then I read, and this one I did just buy because I had borrowed it from the library. It's called I Am David. It's got, wow, a lot of thrift books tickets on here, but it's I Am David by Anne Holm, and it is a short book, but I highly recommend it. It was very good, a very interesting story, and it follows a young man who escapes a prison camp of some sort. They don't tell you where, and he is trying to get to Denmark because one of his captors helped him escape and told him to go there. Very interesting story. A lot of things happen along the way as he, who has only known the prison camp all his life, comes to realization of the world around him and of himself and what he believes. And so I really liked it. I got it for my kids to read because I I probably wouldn't give it to somebody below 5th grade just because of some of the topics that are covered. But it's very, for the most part, clean. I don't remember any swear words. It wasn't something that stuck out if it was there. But yeah, I really recommend it. I'm gonna try to get the video and watch it as well. Video, how old am I? I'm gonna try to watch the movie version. But yeah, definitely enjoyed I Am David. Then I reread Fahrenheit 451, or audio listened to it. Love it. Again, why? What the swear words? It's so annoying. But I did really enjoy that one, and that is, again, kind of dystopian. I wouldn't give it to my middle schooler, let's put it that way, but mostly because of the swears. And so it is very YA-ish dystopian. And basically, if you don't know the story of 451, there is a society, and the firemen no longer put out fires, but they go and start fires to burn books and culture that has been, that are keeping the man down and giving them too many ideas, and it's just bad for society. And one of the firefighters comes to a realization that maybe books aren't evil. And all of this happens because he meets a young girl who is outside the system. She thinks differently, and he has always kind of thought differently, but wasn't really moving towards that, and she pushed him a little bit more. And so you follow Guy Montag, and he goes through this self-discovery of understanding what's going on and what the government, what the culture is doing to them, and how he is propagating that even further to the point that now people are just done, vapid, unable to think, easily manipulated. And so really, really enjoy Fahrenheit 451. Like I said, that was a reread. I was deciding whether or not to give it to one of my kids. I think because of the swearing, I'm gonna hold off. They can read that as an adult. But you know, you do you. And then Napoleon's Buttons by Jay Burson. These last ones have all been on my 40 by 40, by the way. And Napoleon's Buttons, it seems like a really random one. It's like Napoleon's Buttons and 17 Molecules That Changed the World, or Changed Time, or something like that. And it is an interesting read. I really did not like 3 of the chapters. I've seen this on school lists for like middle school, and there's like a whole chapter on the pill that just, and like sexual relations and things like that. Totally not appropriate for middle school, in my opinion. But the other chemical things, because basically the author has, each chapter follows a specific chemical compound, molecule, and how it affected the world. And it was very interesting, and like, you know, talking about Napoleon's army, and it's called Napoleon's Buttons because of the lead in their buttons and what happened when it got in the cold during the war, during their battles with Russia and all that. And so you follow kind of that trajectory each chapter, and it's very interesting. I didn't like that chapter. I did not like the next chapter, and you would think it's because it says witches, but I'm a conservative Christian, and it was not because it talked about witches, or their use of herbs, because I use herbs, and I understand that they've been demonized, and that comes with the territory. And so I know not all the people who are called witches were witches and blah, 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 but there was a whole bunch of sexual stuff in that chapter, and I was like, that's not what I'm here for. And then there was one about climate control, and you know, that's here, there, or everywhere, wherever you decide to land, and I didn't decide to land where they did. So it wasn't enjoyable, but it wasn't enough to make me not like the book. If I had to say, I would say the book that I read earlier this summer, The Disappearing Spoon, much better. You go through each element, and it's like science gossip, but it also tells you about the components and how it works, and it was much better written, much more enjoyably written. And this is a guy that was an author who hated Christians, and says so in the last chapter, basically. But it was much more well written and better follows the topics of chemistry. So Napoleon's Buttons was kind of a miss for me. And then I read And Then There Were None, and I did it partially book, partially audio. I did not solve the mystery. I had been putting this off. It's on my 40 by 40, and I've had this book the entire time. And I kept putting it off because I knew it was a little darker than some of the other Agatha Christie's I've read. And it was. It really was. I don't like horror, and this towed the line with that, in my opinion. It was very stressful. Like, I would not listen to it or read it at night because it was that stressful. but it was very enjoyable. I kept trying to figure out what's going to happen next. How's it going to happen? But yes, 10 people go to Soldier Island, and they come there thinking they're invited by certain people who are not there, and one by one they're knocked off. Yeah, don't skip the epilogue. But very good. It's Agatha Christie, can't go wrong there. And then I read My Man Jeeves, and I actually did that part book, part audiobook, and that is a reread. That's a collection of short stories of P.G. Wodehouse following different characters, mostly Jeeves and Wooster, but it has a couple other characters. I just love the Woosters. I love Jeeves. It is, if you're in a reading slump, if you're just like, I don't know what to pick up some Wodehouse, because it'll have you laughing out loud. It's enjoyable. It's just fun. It's nonsense, and it is fun. So yeah, they're early 1900s Britain, around the world kind of thing, and they are just nonsensical things that happen to this rather, I'd say, upper middle class to upper class families. Yeah, I mean, like, I can't even begin to tell you like the nuance, because they're so random out there. Like, they take in a kid to try to teach him to say kiss me, to try to woo back the woman that his friend loves, and oh my goodness, it's a whole thing. It's hilarious. So highly recommend that. And then I also finished Hans Brinker, or The Silver Skates, and I don't remember who that's written by. I did an audiobook of that because my personal copy is falling apart. This was a read in honor of my father. My father passed away about a year and a half ago, and he had said from childhood that he had read Hans Brinker, and that he remembered his teacher giving it to him, and that he really loved it. And so I have that memory of him telling that to my daughter, actually, and she read the book. So I was like, I need to read this one, and it was very, very sweet story. Probably one of the earlier books that I've read, like based on its publication date, where you go from multiple points of view. So it's not every other chapter or anything like that, but like start out with Hans Brinker, and then you go to this other boy so Hans Brinker is really poor, down on his luck. His dad's got some kind of issue because he fell in a dike, hit his head or something. His mother's run out of money. They're just very impoverished and have a lot of things, but they're happy and they're kind and they're sweet, and they're just wonderful. It's the kind of character you want your child to read and emulate and want to be like. And then you go to this other boy who is wealthy, and he's like, oh yeah, he knows Hans, and he's like, oh, let me try to help him out. But and you follow him, and you get so much of Denmark's history, or Holland's history, and it's like, I mean, it was mind-boggling. It was very good historical fiction in that regard, because you get a lot of history there. It's very interesting. And then you go back to Hans's point of view and things like that. And then I think there was maybe another little boy in there. And they're like skating up and down in the winter. And then there's a big race at the end. So it's Hans Brinker or The Silver Skates. And it's very enjoyable book. It was fun. I did not get to Chantal Read All Day's A Year with Maud, Story Girl. I have that here somewhere. I'm going to hopefully read it this next month. I just didn't have time to like physically pick up a book. That's why most of these are audiobooks. It was a crazy, crazy month with us starting school, having special meetings at church, and then starting new music lessons. It was a bit much. What other things did I have on here? So on my 40 by 40, I read 3 of the books that I wanted to read this month. I didn't get to Omnivore's Dilemma because it is still packed up. Several of my books are. I did get to several of my pre-reads with my kids and things like that. Not all of them, but I'm getting there. And so, yeah. So August was not a terrible month. 12 books, which really, in the grand scheme of things, is a lot. And yeah, it was a good month. So if you have read any of those books and you want to share your experience, drop it in the comment below. And thank you for watching. Have a blessed day.